Hello, everyone. Well, in case you're keeping track, there's some movies that haven't come to Springfield this weekend. We were going to go to Champaign over the weekend to catch a screening of Papillon. Turns out it's actually only playing there this week, so by the time this weekend comes along, we'll have missed it. But at least in that case, well, it's okay. We still have the Steve McQueen original movie. But don't worry, because we have reviews for you of Reprisal and Warning Shot. So we'll get to Reprisal first. Warning Shot, which is the one we'll be talking about later on. Again, it's a screener that we got, and it's a David Spade thriller. And that's how it was sold to me in the email, was like David Spade thrillers. I'm like, oh, well, I get a lot of screeners that I don't watch, but I'm definitely watching this one. We'll have that review for you later on in the video. See, even dude in the chat right now is like, what the hell did you just see?
I haven't heard about these until you told me.
I love that you also saw both of these movies. And for Reprisal, when we were getting in the car, because we've done reviews before with me and you, where like it's like I'm the only one who's seen the movie, and I'm just like describing the movie to you. Mm-hmm. I feel like the movie Reprisal is probably at this point so far out of your memory that this will sort of be like one of those reviews, even though you technically did see the movie Reprisal.
I was nodding off during that movie, so I
thought she was asleep through half of it. I could have leaned over to wake her up, but that would be really mean because the movie Reprisal was playing. If you don't know Reprisal, it's the latest entry in 2018 movies that have a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. So Reprisal is a movie with Frank Grillo and kinda Bruce Willis. So yeah, it's one of those Bruce Willis movies, and for that, I really, really hope Matthew is in the chat right now. I hope that somewhere along the way Matthew Buck shows up in the chat, because this is the kind of movie where Matthew and I were texting a little bit during this movie. He's seen more like of this kind of Bruce Willis movie where Bruce Willis is like Seagal'd into the movie kinda. So he and I are texting back and forth about this movie. He's talking about a couple that I haven't seen. I'm telling him about this movie, and we're almost just sort of like comparing different inserted into movie Bruce Willis films.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. Like we could do the same thing on like Steven Seagal movies. So we were doing that during this, and he goes, "Are you doing a midnight screenings for this tonight?" I'm like, "Oh hell yeah!" So I hope to God he shows up in the chat. I hope he's in the chat because he could tell you about a few more of these movies. Act of Vengeance is one that he brought up that he had seen. So this is a movie where Frank Grillo plays a bank manager, and the bank at the beginning of the film is robbed by Jonathan Schaech. Jonathan Schaech comes in there like Brendan Fletcher from Rampage. It just comes in there, just mask, armor, machine gun, all of that. He gets away with the money, and he ends up killing a security guard. And so Frank Grillo takes this very personally, and
to a strange extent.
I kept because like
maybe I missed something.
He also talks about how he wants to clear his name, but this doesn't even really seem like an issue because who would really blame Frank Grillo for any of this? There might have been a few plot points in there that I was missing, but
I wasn't paying attention.
Oh well, it probably knew that was the case because it flashes back to the robbery scene more times than on Tequila and Benetti when it flashes back to Benetti shooting the kid. That's how much it flashes back to the robbery scene, which we just saw 10 minutes ago, but there's like 10 times it flashes back to the same shots of the robbery scene with Frank Grillo keeping him up in his sleep and all this shit. So he becomes upset. I don't really know if he even knew this security guard all that well. It's like watching
I don't think so.
It's like watching a Charles Bronson movie if like he wanted to avenge somebody who he didn't know. Like Charlie, you're just looking for reasons to shoot people at this point. So anyway, Frank Grillo ends up getting help from his next door neighbor, who's Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis plays an ex-cop in this film, and if you want to see a movie where Bruce Willis is neighbors with them, and they're thrust into like this kind of action scenario. Skip this shit. Just watch the whole 9 yards.
Well, we see Bruce Willis from the front.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about that. Like, because Bruce Willis, they maybe got Bruce Willis for like a day or two on this film, because when it introduces Bruce Willis into this movie, it is some of the most clumsy fucking editing I've seen. Like, I expect that out of a Steven Seagal film or some fly-by-night fucking direct-to-video shit. The way that Bruce Willis is introduced into this movie is jaw-dropping. And there are 3 times in this movie that I can point to where that's hilarious how he is just injected into this film with no artistry or anything. It is just clumsy.
Yeah. The first scene, you had to point it out, because
I had to rewind it. If you had been paying attention, you would have noticed this.
Yeah, well, it was just the way they did it was so, like, lazy, because he's just, like, turned around, and he's just like, oh, hey, like, you know, just waving, like, while he's turned around. Like, this guy who's, like, a different height than he is. And
she's talking about a stand-in. So, when Bruce Willis is introduced into this movie, again, he is Frank Grillo's neighbor. It's not really set up that they know each other that well, or I don't even know if Frank Grillo really mentioned his neighbor necessarily. Frank Grillo just goes out to get in his car and leave for work, and he turns as if Bruce Willis is standing there, but he's not, because he is spliced into the movie using, like, B-roll in this shot. Frank Grillo looks over, and there is just this clumsily edited shot that is just like B-roll of Bruce Willis, I think maybe taken from the end of the movie, where Bruce Willis is like, he's like exercising outside, and he's like exercising outside, so he's all like sweaty and looks over, but it is like, I've seen Seagal action scenes that are edited better than this was. So there's this B-roll shot of Bruce Willis looking over in a completely different location, and Frank Grillo's like, hey, well, we gotta play basketball again or sometime. And then you see this stand-in from behind, different height, different head shape, different body shape than Bruce Willis, and he's like waving from behind, like, it might as well be fucking me standing in for him. So, different head shape, and everyone, and an 80-yard line, like, yeah, we'll get together soon, that does not sound like Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I don't even, it could have been someone else's voice.
I think it might have been. So Bruce Willis comes into it later on when this bank robbery has happened, and you could just hear the sound of the paycheck being cashed when Bruce Willis walks into this scene. This is why I actually gave him some props in Death Wish. Death Wish was not that great of a movie. The Bruce Willis one, it wasn't that great of a movie, but there was, Dave and I were talking about this after we saw it, and Dave was like, God, if the lead actor doesn't give a shit, then I don't give a shit. I actually disagreed with that. As much as the new Death Wish wasn't that great, Bruce Willis was trying in it. I've seen Bruce Willis not try in a movie, and that wasn't him in Death Wish. Death Wish, he actually is trying to give some kind of performance in it. Yeah. This is the kind of Bruce Willis where I'm like, this is sleepwalking Bruce Willis.
Yeah, he was sleepwalking in this, and
this is, when he first walks into the scene, like, oh man, I heard about that guy who was killed at your work, and man, like, hey, on the force, you know, I guess
oh my God,
seen some shit, you know.
I don't understand why I guess, yeah, they are friends, the neighbors are friends, but, like, I don't understand why he is really into this case also.
Because the original script of this movie probably felt more like a buddy film, like more like just like a buddy crime movie. But I hardly call this a buddy film. This is like, in a buddy film, it's like, I got to at least know that the two people fucking know each other
Yeah.
on and off camera. There are
Well, they're
scenes...
not even in the same room in some scenes, like, because they just film Bruce Willis's scenes differently, and it's like in a different lit, like it's in the same room, but the lighting is different, and like he's looking at a different direction than where the guy actually is standing.
Matthew and I were talking about that. Matthew was like, oh yeah, he did that in this movie too. He did that in like, God, I know Act of Vengeance is one I forget what the other one was he was mentioning to me, but Matthew was mentioning, he's like, oh yeah, they do that. He goes, I saw one that they did where he was holding a kid hostage and he was looking at the completely different side of the camera. That happens in this. There's like 80% of Bruce Willis's scenes in this movie, and I'm being generous by saying 80%, it's probably more than that, are just filmed in like this one room where Frank Grillo is going over his plan to try to find Jonathan Sheck. And Bruce Willis, you can tell he's just showing up in the clothes he happened to have on that day.
Yeah.
He's dressed similar to how he was when he was on inside the actor's studio. It's like, I know this is his own fucking wardrobe he's wearing to this set. And there's scenes that are with him and Frank Grillo. You'll have a couple of shots where they're like in frame together. But aside from that, no. Like the lighting is different. Bruce Willis is looking in a completely different direction. There's just stock shots thrown in there of Bruce Willis just kind of reacting to things. There are a couple things in this movie that are my favorite ways that they worked around Bruce Willis maybe only being on set for 2 days of this film. So when I'm picturing the script in my head, I'm picturing like a few different things. One of which, it's like, okay, this probably was more of a buddy kind of movie, and the role of the bank manager was probably played as more of like just kind of an everyman type who was maybe obsessed with this case and gets this ex-cop to help him. But with Frank Grillo in the role, and I love Frank Grillo, don't get me wrong, I do love Frank Grillo, but he looks like action movie Frank Grillo in this.
Everyone in this movie looks like they're in a soap opera.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a guard who's shot later on, and she's in the hospital, and she looks fantastic.
She looks beautiful.
Yeah, she looks absolutely stunning. So Frank Grillo looks like action. He looks like Purge Anarchy Frank Grillo. Like, he's this bank manager, and I kept thinking, is it going to turn out he's like a former cop or former CIA or something? Maybe it did, and I just missed it. But
yeah,
he still looks like action movie Frank Grillo. I'm like, why does he need Bruce Willis's help? Like, he's still like cut and has like the Frank Grillo hair and like the tattoos. And then at the end of the movie, there was the big thing where it's like, oh, now he's a rookie. Now he actually is becoming a cop. I'm like, okay, now it just feels like a prequel to his character from The Shield.
We were talking, like, we were joking around, like, okay, so, because his wife is like, good luck on your first day. And we're like, wait, what? And then we're like, what if he actually becomes a cop now? And he does.
He does. And so I'm like, this feels like it was written to be a much nerdier character or a much more everyman character, because it's not that out of the ordinary to see Frank Grillo jump into do an action movie. So it's less believable that he's just an everyman bank manager.
Yeah.
So anyway,
oh, and they can't afford Bruce Willis at the end either.
That's what I'm getting to. So, all right. A couple of my favorite things of working around Bruce Willis. So, in the climax of this movie, when Frank Grillo's family is kidnapped by Jonathan Sheck, so Frank Grillo then has to go to this meeting to try to trade money for, like,
business
business. Yeah, for to get his family back. Bruce Willis is still in the house that he's at, and then these two random other guys show up who are just like, oh, we've been sent here to help you. We're friends of Bruce Willis's character. They don't literally say that. They're Bruce Willis' character name is James in this. They're like, oh, we're friends of James. Two people we've never seen before in this fucking movie who show up to do this action movie stuff with Frank Grillo because they could barely get Bruce Willis for this climax. Now, don't get me wrong, Bruce Willis does show up at some point in the final climax. He shows up just in time to shoot the main villain of the movie.
Right, yeah.
Then he shows up. Before then, oh, these two jokers you never seen mentioned before in this entire movie. Oh no, they're here to kind of take care of some other stuff. So, okay, here's my favorite thing here. It flashes at the end 6 months later, because this needs an epilogue. It flashes ahead 6 months later where they couldn't get Bruce Willis for this scene where he's supposed to be talking to like Frank Grillo, and I don't know, probably do like, hey, congratulations, you're gonna become a cop now or some shit. I don't know. So they couldn't get Bruce Willis for the scene, so instead there's a greeting card.
Oh my god! And I joked that like I was like, is it from Bruce Willis? Because I was just making a joke.
Yeah.
But it is from him.
It is. It's Bruce Willis's character leaves Frank Grillo a greeting card on his windshield. There is not even a voiceover of Bruce Willis reading this card. It is just Frank Grillo opening it up, going, "Oh, hey, it's from James." It's like, avoid the clap, Jimmy Dugan. Wow. No, it's like, hey, we went through this shit together. Hope everything goes well with you. Good luck on your first day. You gotta be fucking kidding me with this shit.
His dog tag too, and
yeah,
and I was like, did he move? Like,
mm-hmm.
Okay, I guess he's gone now.
Man, and so I told Matthew that. Matthew's laughing his ass off when I'm telling him this. He goes, dude, they did something similar at the last part of one that I watched, where he goes, it wasn't as bad as the greeting card, but they just put a ski mask on him and on a double and tried to pass it off like it was Bruce Willis.
Oh, that is funny.
Bruce Willis is, it's his own fault for being in something like this, and to be this fucking lazy about it, and just there just to cash a paycheck on this kind of film, because this is one of maybe like 12 different Bruce Willis movies where that's the case, where I believe he signed a contract to where he's in a set number of these kind of movies and he just shows up for a couple of days and does stuff like this. But he is so above doing this to his career. Steven Seagal doing stuff like this, I understand that. I get why that was the natural progression of the career of
Maybe
Steven
he's
Seagal.
In a lot of debt or something.
I don't know, but like Bruce, he is above this and apparently doesn't realize he's above this.
I don't know, maybe he's like Nicolas Cage right now or something.
But Nicolas Cage uses that as a way to do some really weird shit. Like, okay, there's the conveyor belt type shit that Nicolas Cage did, like Trespass and Left Behind. Rage, even though I kind of liked Rage, but Nicolas Cage still kind of uses that to his benefit. Like, I can do much weirder stuff now. I can do much crazier shit than something like The Sorcerer's Apprentice. Whereas Bruce Willis could still headline a movie if he fucking wanted to.
Yeah.
But is in a piece of shit like this, like, he's not even using it as a way to do weird shit. He's just doing conveyor belt shit like this.
Yeah, this movie was really, really boring. I was, like, trying so hard. Like, I had to sit up and, like, my eyes were just getting really heavy and I was just like, I wasn't trying to. I was just falling asleep. It was just so boring. And I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't understand any of the characters' motivation.
Oh, you mean like Jonathan Schaech going around shooting everybody for no reason? Yeah. Jonathan Schaech's the robber in this, who just is the stupidest fucking robber that I've seen in a movie recently, where he needs to get a name from a girl who's in the hospital, and she's about to tell a cop who's in there, and instead of just waiting outside the room and waiting for her to say the name, he doesn't. He goes in there and shoots the cop, gets the information out of her, and just shoots her in the head. He's needlessly killing people throughout this whole movie.
Yeah, that was weird.
And it has something to do with his dad. I wasn't paying much attention.
Yeah, I don't really know what the deal was with his dad.
Where would you rank this on the movies that we've reviewed this year that are the 0% movies, that are 0% at least at the time of review?
This one was the worst one because it was the most boring.
Gotti was way better than this.
Oh no, I was really hard on Gotti. Like, I didn't like it. And I found it confusing, but when I'm looking back on it, I'm like, this movie is so incompetent. Like, it's just
Gotti,
like a three-legged dog, kind of. You feel bad for it.
Gotti had passion behind it. This
Yeah.
movie doesn't. This is a conveyor belt film. This is a movie that just shat out there
man, it's
to do
raining.
absolutely nothing, to have absolutely no artistic merit. Even if, like, as cynical as like fucking Billionaire Boys Club was, like Spacey was really good in it. Like there was
Yeah.
at least that.
Dark Crimes had Jim Carrey.
Dark Crimes
like,
had Jim Carrey like trying to make something out of it. This movie's got not like Frank Grillo does what he can. I love Frank Grillo. Frank Grillo does what he can with this part, but he's acting opposite nothing. He's giving nothing to work with
Well,
in
yeah,
this
because
film.
even like Bruce Willis is sometimes not even there in the same room.
He is literally acting opposite nothing in a few scenes. They've replaced Bruce Willis with a fucking like tennis ball on a string.
Yeah.
Like as if he's going to be CGI'd into it later, which
Oh.
maybe that would have been better.
Also, there's a daughter in this who has diabetes. And I was
Oh.
like, they're like, make sure you take your medicine. Make sure you like eat all of your breakfast.
With
like,
the mom
it's
acting like she's in an after-school special, like,
Yeah.
now make sure you didn't eat enough, did you? Like,
Yeah, like, it's
she's
like-
not two.
I was like, okay, well, I'm sure this is gonna come up again because they're making it clear she has diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as the chat saying, diabetes, bro.
Diabetes.
We were just talking about Wilford Brimley. All right, should we get to the next movie?
Oh yeah.
'Cause we watched 2 movies this day. I don't know if Reprisal is playing at a theater near you. Dear God, I hope not. But anyway, we got the other day. I get a lot of screeners that are sent to me. Sometimes, like if it's something like, oh well, that kind of stands out. Then I'll be like, all right, well, let's give this a shot. Like when we watched that One Nation Under God, where I'm like, okay, well, this is going to be terrible. But for
Oh, God.
fucking review purposes, like, yeah, okay, of course we'll watch this year's Kevin Sorbo religious movie. So the company that put this movie out sent me a screener for this, and it was sold to me as like David Spade in his first dramatic role. This high stakes thriller featuring David Spade. Again, first dramatic role in a thriller. What this movie is about is it is a home invasion movie. It's a home invasion film where a woman goes to her house. Her dad has just died.
I think
So
it's her
she's
grandpa.
yeah, dad or grandpa has just died. So she is this down on her luck waitress, has a daughter. The two of them end up going to the dad's house or grandpa or whatever, and it turns out that there is like high value in the water that's underneath this house. So David Spade, who is like this wannabe businessman, like his dad or his grandfather Bruce Dern runs this water business.
I didn't
or
really
what?
know. Something that has to do with water.
Something to do with business and water and businessy water, business. So they want the deed to be signed over to them so that they can now get a lot of money because of the value of water going through this house. So David Spade, wanting to make a name for himself as a businessman, hires these two fucking yokels, redneck Jules and Vincent from Pulp Fiction. Oops. So yeah, he hires the two kids from the end of Back to the Future 3. So he hires these two redneck assholes to go to the dad's house to force the guy to sign over to sign the deed over to them. But the guy's dead and they don't know that, and so they take the mother and the daughter hostage. When this movie started, I was like, I saw this movie just like 3 months ago when it was breaking in with Gabrielle Union, where her dad died. She goes to the house and these robbers go in because there's high value in the house or something like that.
The water source or supply or something. I think that's the high value. No, wait.
No, that was in this, not in Breaking In. Breaking In,
sorry.
I can't, but there was like, I don't know, maybe there was a safe. Probably a safe. There was maybe diamonds. It's usually diamonds. So, this movie feels like watching the IFC version of Breaking In, where it's like, oh, I would probably come across this movie at 1 o'clock in the morning on IFC in like 1998. The movie is, it's more I don't know if ambitious is the right
There's
word,
a lot
but like
more heart to it. Because you were thinking it might have been like crowdfunded.
oh, well, I mean, it had a lot of executive producers and a lot of associate producers, so I was kind of wondering, I was like, was this movie crowdfunded? Like, I mean, obviously, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, but I know one of our perks was like, being credited as associate producer, and there was a lot of that on this movie, so I didn't know if, like, I don't really know the backstory of this movie and how it got made and everything. I know the director, I think, had done some shorts. This might be a first-time writer. I had never heard of this movie until a couple of days ago.
It's supposed to be inspired by a true story, so I mean, I could see there being a little bit more,
Right.
like, someone being really interested in the case and stuff. So.
It feels like they are trying to make this a good thriller, like, because just because of a lot of the actors they have in it. The old grandfather who runs the family business is Bruce Dern. James Earl Jones shows up in this. Frank Whaley is in it as a door-to-door preacher, or
just like a missionary.
yeah, it's just a missionary who also gets taken hostage in this house. There's a lot of monologuing in it, and so they are trying
there's
to.
A lot of
we'll get to the
monologues.
monologuing here in a second, but like there is a lot. You can tell they're trying to get solid performances out of a lot of the people in this movie. So there is. It feels like there is at least a little bit more ambition or heart in a movie like this versus something like Breaking In, or just kind of like a cheap like Lifetime thriller.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is still just a home invasion movie. Like it has maybe some more heart to it than a standard one does, but it does have some stuff about it that really does hold it back and just makes me throughout all of it feel like, okay, I'm just watching another home invasion movie again. Because while this movie was sold to me on David Spade in his first dramatic role, and David Spade is like a villain in this thriller,
No.
they really okay, so for the first, like, this is an 87-minute movie, and for the first 77 minutes of it, I was like, they tricked my ass.
Yeah.
Because before then, David Spade is only in like 2 scenes of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
David Spade is in it at the very beginning when he tells the people, like, all right, I need this water. I need you to go do this for me. And then he's in it in a scene later on when it cuts to him and his grandfather's telling a story about water. And he's like, all right, well, time to get you back to bed.
He's like, I should probably go. All right, shut up, old man.
Comes into it more so in the last 10 minutes of the movie where
Maybe
they
like
actually put him in there with the action, but before then I was like, oh, they really over exaggerated like a lot of stuff about this. Like, granted, good on them, because if they didn't do that, I wouldn't have watched this movie. Mm-hmm. That is what got me to watch the film, was because I like David Spade. I like David Spade a lot.
Oh yeah, me too.
So that did make me want to watch this. I was curious to see what he would do in a movie like this. And for the first couple of scenes that he's in, it did feel like he was like trying to rein in the sarcasm a little bit.
Really? I didn't.
Well, yeah, because he's talking to those 2 yokel hitmen that he's hired, and he's like, all right, guys. He's like, this shouldn't be too hard. The guy's like 90. You could go in there and get that, and you can go in there and get that signature from them.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So it felt like he was this close to turning on the glorious David Spade snark. And so I'm watching him going like, all right. But when it gets to the last 10 minutes of it, when he actually gets some dramatic stuff to do, I actually thought he worked.
He did a good job. It was really cool to see him like that, and he did a good job. Like, I was still thinking David Spade, but he wasn't doing any sarcasm really. Like,
no, I could see where David Spade in better material could work in this kind of role. And we said, it's like, I would be way more interested in this role if it were David Spade playing like the main villain guy who comes in there and takes his family hostage, because that's kind of how the movie was sold to me.
Yeah, there's two guys that are hitmen, and there's one guy who has like at least like 10 monologues. And I was like, this should have been David Spade as this guy.
You would have had to have...
He was a crazy, like, wild card type guy.
Oh.
And that could have been really cool to see David Spade like that. And
they would have to make him not a redneck, because then it would have been like
Joe Dirt.
Joe Dirt's in a Thriller now. So they would have had to have made him not a redneck. But I was like, I'd be way more interested in this movie. I would even, like, maybe give it a slightly passing grade just on the gimmick alone of seeing David Spade as a killer in a home invasion movie. That would have been interesting. But no, they don't do that. He's just in it a couple of times before then, and then at the end he comes in more so, and that did show promise for him, like, if he got some more practice in on it, like, it did show some promise on making a transition into a movie like this.
Yeah, I leaned over to you and I was like, man, I wish David Spade was this guy's character. Like,
was the main bad guys.
Yeah.
Because there are things about this movie that really just fucking sink it for me. One of them is the fact that there's two guys who come in to rob this place. One of them's like the sensible one who's like, I just want to sit here and smoke weed. Hey, don't yell at that kid. Don't yell at that kid. Don't point the gun at the kid. Don't point the gun at the kid. Don't talk to the kid like that. That's the majority of this fucking guy's dialogue.
Yeah.
And before then, they're just having, like, again, like, redneck Pulp Fiction dialogue between the two of themselves, talking about, like, just random shit that the writer kind of pulled out of his ass. And so it's one of those home invasion villains where there's such a wild card that, like, why didn't someone just shoot this guy in the head 10 minutes into this movie?
One of the things that really just pissed me off during the movie is that there's so many times they could have gotten rid of this guy.
Yeah.
Or at least tied him up or something. Because for no reason, the wild card guy knocks out the other hitman for some reason. Mm-hmm. And then the guy that was passed out, he wakes up again and then he smacks him on the head. Mm-hmm. And and they just leave him on the floor waiting for him to wake up, and they're just kind of talking to him like, this guy was trying to rape this woman and trying to, like, also shoot them several times, and it's just not stable and unpredictable. And they just, like, when they had the chance to at least tie him up, not kill him per se, but just tie him up and at least take his gun away. His gun is right next to him, and they just wait for him to wake up. And yeah, granted, the guy does take his bullets out, but still.
But that happens constantly in this movie. And this is a character who's introduced into the movie by going up to a random woman in her car and licking bird shit.
That was gross.
Licking bird shit off of her window because she paid him $10 to do so. Then he pulls out a knife and robs her. Like, that's how this guy's introduced into the film. This happens so much in this movie where this guy is knocked out, gets a gun away from him, and is always given an opportunity to get the gun. When they knock his ass out, that scene you were describing, and they just leave him on the ground, they don't tie him up or anything. They don't do any of that shit. Like, yeah, okay, they take the fucking bullets out of the gun, but they still leave the knife on him.
And he could knock the guy out again and take the bullets.
Yeah, that happens so much in this film. There's a part where they have a gun pointed at him, and they shoot him, like, in the arm or something,
they
and
grazed his ear.
They graze his ear, and he drops the rifle. The girl goes up to get it, but she grabs it by the wrong end, so it burns her hands, and then just doesn't decide, like, oh, well, maybe I should pick this up by the other end. No, she just drops it and runs away with it so that dumbass can get the fucking gun again. Yeah. This happens constantly in this film.
Yeah, where they had so many times they could have just escaped. And
I'm like, I don't feel sorry for them anymore. It's their own fault that the situation is escalated this fucking bad.
Yeah, they could have done so much to get away from this guy. And the wild card guy ends up killing the other hitman too. And I'm like, you kind of did that to yourself, man.
Because he didn't take the fucking knife away from him.
Yeah.
They didn't search this stupid fucking guy.
He knew he had a knife,
He
too.
did. He saw him threaten the girl with it earlier. And then they honestly do some stuff in this movie that makes me think, like, this should be a David Spade comedy. Because, like, this fucking stupid-ass redneck robber says a thing at the beginning, like, I don't like trees. I was stuck in the woods for a week, so I hate trees. I don't like trees.
Yeah, there's, like, an ongoing joke with that about how much
Who
he
hates trees? No one hates trees. I do. I hate trees. Did he watch The Happening too many fucking times? So then he, like, the girls escape into the woods and he runs after them and it goes into, like, shaky cam vision, like, oh no,
Trees.
oh, trees.
And, like,
you are kidding me with
oh
this
no,
shit.
they went into the woods. Trees,
Oh,
my only weakness.
My one weakness, trees. Jesus.
And he starts whittling and he's like, oh, I thought you hated trees. Well, that's why I'm cutting it.
That's why I'm cutting your stupid fucking trees.
It's like, what is up with this guy in trees?
I hate this guy. I hate this stupid villain.
That guy was stupid. He was annoying.
And it's like they have to just stretch this movie to 87 minutes. So they make every character do something stupid to make sure that they are still being held hostage by this guy. Not to mention the fact that so much of this movie is monologuing.
Oh, can you see that? What is that?
It's the light on the phone just kind of blinking.
Oh.
So there's so much monologuing in this film, from the guy monologuing about trees, from Bruce Dern monologuing about water, to the mom monologuing about her past and how her daughter was born. So, like, every person has, like, some sort of dark thing in their past that they're monologuing about.
And they are long, too. And
It makes this movie, I leaned over to you and
yeah.
went, this movie's like The Breakfast Club if they were being held hostage by John Bender.
yeah. Because there's just so much, like, back and forth of just long monologues, and they're just talking, and, like, you know, it's like the scene where they're all smoking weed and stuff. And, like,
Yeah, and
that's
it's
just
like,
the whole movie
a lot of it's
from
out of
that.
nowhere. Like, it's this fucking redneck guy talking to Frank Whaley, like, I'll bet you're secretly gay. Tell me about... And so, like, he'll start yelling at Frank Whaley about religion, like, you're just a hypocrite because you this in religion, but this in religion. I'm like, is this just the writer, like, using his Twitter account to give dialogue to this guy? Like, so, there's so many monologues between that guy monologuing about his PTSD and, like, his dad mistreated him, like, smoke up, Johnny! Like, and the girl monologuing about how she was, like, raped in school, and like, it's so much monologuing in this goddamn movie.
I got pretty bored, and, like, I'm fine with monologues, and I like, you know, dialogue in movies, and you know, like something like a Quentin Tarantino movie or something.
Yeah.
But this was like, I'm like, this is a thriller, right? Like,
It feels like this should be a play.
yeah, it does.
Like, it should be a play. That's what made me... It wasn't very interesting because
I got pretty bored.
the villain is too stupid and annoying for me to be scared of him. Guillermo Diaz is the guy. He's on Scandal. I think he was on Weeds. I've seen him in a few other things. The villain is too dumb for me to be scared of him.
Yeah.
David Spade... I liked it when David Spade popped up on screen just to see David Spade in a different kind of role, but he's not in it enough.
Yeah. When David Spade pops up, he's good. Like, he does a good job, like, with being intimidating, I think. And so, since the woman it has the rights, like, owns the house and, like, the water source or supply or whatever that is, and he's like, okay, can you just sign this paper and we'll let you go? And she signs it. I'm like, why would you sign it? They're not gonna let you go.
Because why not? Like, she just wants the movie to be over with. I could see David Spade really working in, like, a stalker thriller.
I could see that.
Like, I could. Like, I would like to see him go this direction in his career. I would like that a lot. Like, as somebody who does... I love David Spade. Like, his movies are hit or miss, to say the fucking least.
Yeah.
But his stand-up, his work on Saturday Night Live, all that. Tommy Boy's still one of my favorite comedies.
Oh yeah, Tommy Boy's great.
David Spade.
Emperor's New Groove is great.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie. Like, Spade, I love David Spade. When he popped up on talk shows, that guy still makes me laugh. Like, he's a dude where, like, I mean, if you do what I do for a living, Spade is like, he's a snark icon.
Oh, he's so snarky.
Like, he is, and he's great at it. He's brilliant at it. So it was, as a guy who's enjoyed his work for well over 20 years now, like, I liked seeing him branch out and make this transition. Like, for the first couple scenes he was in, you could feel like, okay, he's kind of reining back the snark a little bit. You could tell he kind of wanted to go full snark on a couple of lines, and they really weren't giving him much to work with. Like, they were just, here's some lines to say, but they do give him some stuff to do in the last act of the film.
Does this suit make you look fat? No, your face does.
It was...
Sorry, I was just thinking about
David
Spade lines that are just cracking me up.
Oh, yeah. Housekeeping? You want mint for pillow? You want me jerk you off?
What kind of hotel is this?
This movie is a hard movie to recommend because I really don't. When it was over...
Sorry.
Well, I mean, it was better than Reprisal.
Oh, this was better, but if David Spade was in it more, I would recommend it just to see David Spade, but he's not. So, I mean... Just
watch his scene in the last 10 minutes. You don't need to sit through this movie. It's just another home invasion movie. Not a great one. It's not that intense. It's kind of dumb. It's not that good. Not one of the worst movies I've seen this year, but it's not that fucking good.
Yeah.
So I mean, the people who sent me this, they knew how to sell it to me. So it's like, oh, we are watching this. So all right, well, no, I really, you know what? If this thing pops up on Netflix or something, just fast forward to the David Spade scenes. That's really all you need to see.
Yeah.
Let's see, this weekend, Searching is coming to Springfield this weekend, and tomorrow is The Nun and Peppermint. That's coming up tomorrow. So, all right, guys, that's it for tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone in the chat, for watching these two movies that maybe one or two of you have heard of.
Right.
All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Take care.